From the Oklahoman newsroom, it's another Thunder Thursday here with our Thunder coverage team. I'm Jenny Carlson with Thunder beat writers. He's breaking news right now. Here he is.
I'm not breaking anything.
I don't know what's going on here.
I'm tweeting out the link.
Oh, be sure to get on Eric's Twitter feed so you'll know when we're live for Thunder Thursday. Eric Horn, Thunder beat writer Brett Dawson.
Link tweeted.
I'm not tweeting anything. I'm just here.
Tweeted.
Okay, and columnist Barry Trammell. He's without electronic device at all, so.
How do I ever survive?
He's doing it right. He's doing it right.
All right, guys, lots to talk about. Thunder playing pretty well here recently, although had some interesting moments against the Washington Wizards on Wednesday night. Let's talk first, before we get to the Thunder, let's talk about Scott Brooks. Made his return to Oklahoma City, now the Wizards coach, and quite an ovation, really. But, Barry, I wasn't surprised that he got an ovation.
No. He could get elected mayor, for crying out loud. Everybody loves Scott Brooks, and everybody should love Scott Brooks. He's a prince among men. Just a great blessing and a great gift to Oklahoma City. An NBA coach who was really just sort of a regular guy, just a nice fella, considerate of all people, down to earth, the kind of guy that everybody could connect with, and it was just great to see him. You could tell, I spent some time back in the back hallways last night with the ushers and support personnel and people who weren't, this wasn't a case of just glad to see somebody you used to see every once in a while. These were people that you could tell their emotions were heartfelt about Scott Brooks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and guys, I think maybe as telling as anything, well, aside from the ovation, which it was long and it was loud, much like Serge Ibaka when he came back a few weeks ago with the Magic, but to see Russell Westbrook break from his pregame, blinders on, out to, do his whatever, he goes over and talks to Scott Brooks, Brett.
Yeah, he described James Harden as one of his closest friends. And when James Harden came, James kind of got in his way at the scorer's table, and Russell patted him on the shoulder in a friendly way. Yeah. What he did with Scott Brooks last night qualifies for Russell as an outpouring of emotion. He gave him a hug. They had some words. Normally, he makes a beeline to stand underneath the basket. That was a prolonged pregame conversation by Russell standards.
Yeah, definitely so. Eric, can you put into context, now that we've got a little time and space on the Scott Brooks era for the Thunder, just the impact that this guy had? We see, like Barry said, there's the personal relationships. There's these guys that still remain on the team that were obviously with Scott Brooks for years and years and years. But as you think about impact of Scott Brooks, what springs to mind for you?
Well, first thing that comes to mind is Russell Westbrook. And, it might be Kevin Durant if he was still around. It might be Serge Ibaka. I think he played a large part in those guys growing as a unit. But Russell Westbrook, would he be the guy that we know today in terms of his confidence and in terms of the player and the leader that he's become if it wasn't for Scott Brooks? He probably would be, because Russell's just his force of nature. But I think that Scott Brooks played a large part in developing Russell Westbrook into who he is and giving him the reins to go and take over that Thunder offense. Scott talked about it this week. Russell talked about it, how Scott handed over basically the keys to the Thunder's offense to Russell and allowed him to grow into that position. And Russell talked glowingly about Scotty being a little feisty fire plug of a competitor, and I think that they kind of see those similarities in each other, and they really had a connection that way.
Well, and let's not forget that he put Russell Westbrook at the point guard position when there was still a lot of debate about what is this guy really. And Barry, we saw it firsthand when that happened a few years ago. Earl Watson's the point guard, and a serviceable point guard, but here's this guy, is he really a point guard? How's this gonna work? And Scott Brooks just, took a chance, which now maybe doesn't look like a chance, but at the time it sure felt like it.
Russell on, I guess it was Tuesday, the guys asked Russell about memories of Scott Brooks and those things, and Russell had a lot of good things to say. One of the things he said was he always had my back. And look back 5-6 years ago, when Russell was clearly a star player already, about to become an all-star, maybe even after he was an all-star, and still questions galore in the state, outside the state, everywhere. Is this guy a point guard? Does this guy shoot too much? Does this guy have a winning mentality? And just constant debate about Russell Westbrook. And Scotty Brooks did indeed always have Russell Westbrook's back. He refused to give any ground on the notion that Russell Westbrook wasn't transcending in the exact perfect arc towards superstardom. So no doubt about it. Scotty Brooks had some limitations as a coach. He wasn't a perfect coach. but his development of younger players was the perfect guy at the perfect time for the Thunder, and Russell Westbrook is the embodiment of that.
You know, and I think about, too, when he took over that team, he took over for P.J. Carlissimo, gets fired early in the Thunder's first year here, really seemed like a locker room sort of, going this way. Nobody seemed to really be, getting around P.J. Carlissimo, and you could sort of see this young group, sort of straggling out, and Scott Brooks really seemed to bring these guys together. I don't know what the Wizards have said about his style. I mean, obviously tough times right now in Washington, not winning a ton of games, but he was really seen as a player's coach. He treated these guys well. He was very consistent with them. What have you guys heard just sort of from the Washington aspect of things about how his style is playing with the Wizards?
Well, I think Scotty's coming into a difficult situation with Washington, too. I mean, he's not I don't think it's a different, tougher situation for Scotty to come into a place where these guys are well established. John Wall's been around for a while, Bradley Beal. I mean, their relationship, the Wall-Beal relationship's been out there in the media, as Scotty had to walk into that and kind of figure out that situation on his own. Not to mention the Thunder teams that he cultivated are just better teams than the Wizards are right now, with more depth and more talent, and it seems like more affable guys. I don't know the Wizards guys personally, but Scotty's in a different situation now, and I think that he can be successful with the Wizards eventually. But that team, they're probably going to have to change whatever they've got going on in terms of their dynamic, or maybe make some moves, because it just doesn't seem like the same kind of chemistry or same kind of unit that Scott had with Kevin, Russell, and Serge, and all those guys coming up together, and James Harden too as well. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess it sort of begs the question. They do have a more, a roster that's a little more established. Is he going to have to already be saying, I'm fighting for my job, Brett?
Well, that's a great question, because when you look at, if you're trying to replicate what Scotty did here, you'd give him a job like Minnesota, right? Where it's all these young guys, they need to come up, and maybe they're not ready to compete for a title. In Washington, those guys they've been established, and the knock here was that Scotty got you from point A to point B, but to go to point C, you were going to have to bring in somebody else. And Washington is a franchise, I think, that fancies itself way closer to point C than it really is. The one thing I can say, based on just what you hear from those guys, they unsurprisingly said things about how they wanted to win that game for Scotty. It was important for them for that reason. I do think he inspires loyalty among players because he's so loyal to players. But whether he's the guy to take Washington over a hump it has really struggled to get over, I don't know.
One thing that Scotty did with the young Thunder is he got them to commit into buying into defense early on. And I don't know if he's going to be able to do that with Washington, because what we saw from
You're skeptical after what you saw.
What we saw from the Wizards last night, God bless those guys. They have a bunch of talented guys in Bradley Beal and John Wall and Kelly Oubre who hit some big threes. But Scott's got a tough task ahead of him trying to fix the Washington Wizards defense.
Well, it seems like, I mean, you mentioned roster moves, Barry. That's a roster that's going to have a hard time competing there. I mean, you look at who they've got. They just have a bunch of outside guys, and I mean, how can you compete with so little inside depth?
Yeah, they don't. Markieff Morris is their power forward. Jason Smith is their backup center, for crying out loud. Scotty actually coached a heck of a game. He went small to get him back in the game. He went super small with Markieff Morris as his center, and really put Billy Donovan on his heels. And so I thought Scotty really coached a heck of a game last night, but that's not a great roster. It's not a good roster. It's not a good culture. It's a little bit of a mess. I hope Scotty wins big. I'm pulling for the Washington Wizards. I'm on the Darnell Mayberry bandwagon. I hope the Washington Wizards win the East because of Scotty Brooks. But they're a long way from winning.
Hey, win or lose, Scotty's getting paid.
Well, that's true.
I think he's getting about $7 million per year, so we can't say that Scotty's a loser in any of this.
Wow, yeah, that's a big number when you throw that out there. Talking about that game last night, the Wizards did a great. I mean, they came back from 16 down. They get the lead in the fourth quarter, but then it just felt like Russell Westbrook decided, you know what? I had a terrible start to this game. It's go time. It brings us back to Russell Westbrook talking about how Scott Brooks was the first guy to sort of launch him, and now here he is, 4 consecutive triple-doubles, the shot to send it to overtime, then the huge overtime. Eric, it just so many superlatives out there with Russell Westbrook, but what have you seen of late that stands out to you about the way he's playing?
Well, I looked it up last night, and in the past 5 games, he's shot below 40% in all those games. He's not been good shooting the ball offensively, but his competitive spirit and the way he fights, even when he's not playing his best offensive basketball, is the thing that stood out to me the most. Billy Donovan said it best last night when Russell struggles, he seems to focus in even more. There was besides the Scott Brooks image of Russell going over to the bench before the game, the best image of last night, there was a point where Russell missed a dunk and he had an easy dunk, and then he kind of looked up at the sky like why? What is going on? Like he was asking the basketball guys, what is going on? And at that point he was like maybe 1 of 8 or something. He was just in a total struggle. But then once he saw that 3-pointer go down at the end of regulation, everything just came together from there. We've seen that from Westbrook at the end of fourth quarters and in the fourth quarter and in the overtimes in the past 3 games. He's really elevated his game when needed in those late game situations for the Thunder.
There were some times in the overtime where he and Oladipo, and we'll get to Oladipo in a second, but both of them were kind of using the same little spot there, that free throw line extended elbow on the left side, hitting shot after shot after shot. And it's sort of, I had a clear thought in my head, like, that's not even fair. That's not even fair, because they can get there. Westbrook, prime among them, can get there and then hit that every time. You got to think Scott Brooks is standing over there on the sideline going, I remember when that used to be for my benefit, and now it's just killing me. But that 3, obviously huge, Brett. But, it just seems like when he gets in that zone, it's almost like he's playing a different game than everybody else out there.
Yeah, I was saying this today. I kept thinking during that overtime about John Wall, who's always saying that he belongs in the conversation with the Russell Westbrooks and the Chris Pauls and the Damian Lillards. And I watched that overtime and thought, this is why you're not in that conversation. It's because Westbrook was missing shots last night. You talk about that 16-foot elbow, jumper. Yeah. He couldn't make that. He couldn't come close on it for most of the game. And yet, when the game's on the line, gets into overtime, a lot of people don't believe in the idea of like clutch, and this, statistically it's not a real thing.
Right.
But watch him do that, and it was a real thing last night. He carried them on a night when it just didn't look like he was going to be able to do it. Billy Donovan said he has a computer in his head. He's just storing all this stuff that happens over the course of the game. When he struggles, it's all up in the computer. Eventually the problem works itself out. He can access all that information he has and finish strong.
Max headroom what do we got here, Barry? Is he now gone to cyborg status?
Well, I actually heard Billy say that, and I'm not all sure I'm buying that. I think Russell is a very smart player. He doesn't get enough credit for his court vision, for his understanding of the game, but he also plays a lot on emotion, and he's fueled by emotion. And last night was interesting because you could see. You mentioned the look by Russell doing that.
I thought he was talking to the rim.
But
at one point,
I honestly thought
he kept going. After he got out from under the rim, he kept going. It was like he was
you know what we said? He's so powerful he can miss a dunk. He missed 2 layups where he just literally is there, and it wasn't like the ball rolled around the rim and fell off. He didn't even get it over the rim at one time. He just was clearly off anytime he shot. But he worked through it, and by the end of the game, they couldn't guard him and he couldn't miss. So his determination and his will, I thought, were really on display last night, and his ferocity, of course, with the rebounding and his eyesight and execution with passing. I thought it was a vintage Russell game, and one that they had to have that kind of performance down the stretch, because that's a game they were on the verge of losing. I mean, they're down 7 with 3 minutes left, and they're going to go home a loser.
Yeah, and here we sit, guys. It's December 1st, believe it or not. Russell Westbrook right now 31.2 points a game. He's averaging 10.5 rebounds, 11.3 assists. We've made it thus far, and he's averaging that triple-double. 4 in a row. How many more can he get? I don't know if he can ever reach Big O status, but because I think it was 13, his run of triple-doubles. It's the longest I've seen something like that. But anyway, let's talk about those averages because, he wasn't quite there for rebounds last time we gathered here for Thunder Thursday, but now he's over. We think that's the toughest one to get. What do you guys think about the likelihood that this triple-double thing could actually happen this year?
I've continually said no, but I've also said to myself that I will resist from putting limits on what Russell Westbrook can do on a basketball court because he continues to to expand what I thought is possible of a basketball player, particularly one of his size. We've seen LeBron James do amazing things in his 13, 14-year NBA career, and he and Russell Westbrook are the guys who continue to set benchmarks in terms of all-around play. Yeah. So is it possible, as some coaches have said leading up to this? Yeah, it's possible that he can do it. I'm still going to go with no, just from the standpoint that they're going to get into a tougher part of the schedule. They haven't even played the Spurs yet.
True.
They've still got a couple of games against the Clippers, 3 against the Warriors. They got a Hawks game coming up on Monday, and the Hawks are playing really well. So there's going to be some games where the Thunder are going to get blown out of some games, and Russell Westbrook won't even have an opportunity to get to some of those numbers. Now, there are going to be some games where the Thunder are getting blown out, like against Sacramento, and Russell Westbrook's still going to be an assist away from a triple-double, but he's going to get pulled out of the game because Billy Donovan doesn't want to play him for 13 or 14 more minutes and waste their time potentially getting Russell Westbrook hurt. So it depends on how the Thunder's doing as a team. If they're playing these tight, close, 2 overtime games a lot with teams, which we're probably going to see a lot of, Russell Westbrook's going to have a chance to rack up some serious numbers.
Yeah. Is it possible, guys? What do you think?
I said at the beginning of the year it was not possible to do it for 82 because that's what I got asked. If you asked me if he could do it for 20, I would have said no to that too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the fact that he's still doing it 20 games in and the fact that he's raised his rebounding average so much over the last couple of weeks, sure, it's possible. It's absolutely possible. He's proving right now that it's possible. It's a quarter of the way of the season almost, and he's doing it. It's going to be really hard to sustain, but 20 games is really hard to sustain.
You talk about rebounds, guys. Right now he's averaging 8.2 defensive rebounds a game. He's never averaged that many rebounds total for a season. Highest he's ever had to this point was 7.8. So right there you see, that defensive number is where the difference is made. And assists, granted, that counts on teammates. So it's not to say that might not change, but the rebounding thing, Barry, seems like that's the one. If he can maintain this pace of rebounding, it seems possible.
Well, that's really the question. We keep saying, can he get a triple-double? What we're really asking is, can he be a double-digit rebounder for the course of a season? Because he's going to score. He's going to get the assists. We've known that. He was over 10 last year, and he's distributing even more this year. So can he get 10 rebounds a game? The problem historically with a guard who rebounds well is he'll have a game fairly often where he has 4 or 2 or 3, and that really pulls your average down. So far, we haven't seen that with Russell. Russell, when he doesn't have 10 rebounds or 12 rebounds, he has 8 or he has 7 or he has 9. So he's getting rebounds. To me, it's a question of durability and physically hanging on to this pace that he's playing at. It's physically draining what he's doing. He's always been the guy you can't set limits on it. We talked about it. You think he just keeps going and going and going. If he can keep just playing with this kind of will, he'll get those rebounds and be in the neighborhood. Whether he lands on 9-7 or 10-2, who knows? But he's going to be in the neighborhood if he can keep up this style of play.
And it's going to, excuse me.
No, sorry.
It's going to be interesting to see if Westbrook can pick his spots in certain areas and whether that affects his triple-double chase as well. We've seen him in the past few games start to look for that outlet pass over the top instead of going coast to coast for the rim runs like he does, because he's putting himself at risk of exposing himself to more contact when he's going coast to coast for those breakaway layups and such. So he's been passing over the top, and he's super good at it, by the way. Mm-hmm. But last night we saw in going up for these rebounds against 7-footers all the time, he's going to get caught in the face. I think Marcin Gortat caught him in the face one time last night. He's been slow to get up a couple times in the past few games, going for those rebounds, those offensive rebounds. We know how aggressive he is. So it's going to be interesting to see where he picks his spots as the season goes on. 62 games to go. And that being said, I think Vegas put the over-under on Russell Westbrook triple-doubles at 20. He's at 9 through 20 games. I'm pretty sure that's coming down in the next 62 games, somewhere or another.
Here's a key to watch, especially as we get deeper into the season. And this is going to be a clash of titans here. Billy Donovan is going to need to rest Russell Westbrook. We saw Blake Griffin sit out a game the other day. Greg Popovich been doing it forever. That needs to happen with Russell Westbrook. Now, on this team, that means, in all likelihood, you're going to lose. But here's a stretch in January. They're at New Orleans on a Wednesday, home against Dallas on a Thursday, at Cleveland on a Sunday, at San Antonio on a Tuesday, home on a Wednesday against Chicago. That's 5 games in 8 days, including 2 games that it's going to be tough to win if they had James Harden and Kevin Durant at San Antonio, at Cleveland. Does Billy Donovan say, you know what, we're going to tank one of these games. We're going to put Russell Westbrook in handcuffs and not let him out of the locker room, and he's going to sit there, and we're going to force him to take a risk.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chesapeake Energy Arena fans. The Dallas game on a Thursday might be at risk for Russell Westbrook and street clothes.
Yeah. I'm looking here at the rebound numbers, which Barry was talking about. He's had his worst rebounding game was a 5-rebound game. He's had a handful of 6 and 7, but really, especially since about middle of, or the second week of November. I mean, 14, 12, 15, 7, 10, 11, 8, on, and then double digits all the rest of the way, including that 18 rebound game a couple nights ago. Just unbelievable. But I think that physical part of it, I mean, it's tough. And it's obviously it's been done before, but you talked to Oscar Robertson earlier before the year, Brett. What did he say about the physical demands of doing this?
Just that it would be by far the hardest thing. I mean, and he had no question that Russell Westbrook could do this, that he could average triple-double. But even in saying that, he kept saying the hardest part is just going to be the rebounds. A lot of people, when I talked to some people about that for that story, people will tell you LeBron is probably better suited. He's got a lot of shooters around him, and he's so big and strong physically. He can go in and mix it up a little bit. But he's probably going to rest a little more. They're in a different place than the Thunder. They can rest LeBron some. They're trying to think about a really long playoff run.
Yeah.
So, he might, going in, might have been the better suited guy on paper. But, Russell seems impossible to tire. He seems impossible to wear down. But he's human, and that's going to take its toll. And plus, now he's going to have to contend with Enes Kanter, who said he's going to start blacking out Russell Westbrook himself because he's not leaving any rebounds for the big guys.
Not to mention, there's a chance that Russell Westbrook could potentially win a scoring title and an assist title too.
Wow.
And I mean, who knows? He could finish in. It'd be crazy to think he'd finish in the top 10 in rebounds, being his size. But he's certainly going to be the top rebounding guard. He's been that for probably the past 2 seasons in the league.
Yeah.
But an assist and a scoring title is not out of the realm of possibility for Russell Westbrook either. A tiny Archibald feat.
Wow, that would be amazing. Guys, we talk about the physical demands. Is there any part of the triple-double numbers? We celebrate it so much. Fans love it. It's obviously hugely important to the Thunder's success. Is there any part of Russell Westbrook's game right now that either because of the triple-doubles or other reasons got you concerned? I'm looking at his numbers here. His turnovers a little bit up. He's 5.5. Steals are a little bit down, 1.4 right now for the season, a little bit lower than his career average. Anything that sort of worries you as you look at this chase to triple-double, or do you feel like Russell Westbrook's balancing it all pretty well?
There's 2 things. One is what we talked about, the physicality. He's going to have to play a lot of minutes to do it, and I don't know that Billy Donovan wants him to do that. The other is this, and so far I don't think it's a problem, but it could be. You don't ever want an individual's situation to start trumping the team goals. Mm-hmm. You don't want this season to be about Russell Westbrook's numbers and Russell Westbrook's greatness. This season has to be about the Thunder winning as many games as possible, positioning itself for the playoffs, and seeing what kind of statement it can make in the playoffs. None of us believe they're a championship caliber roster, but they are a playoff team. And can they set the standard and set a foundation for future playoff success? You don't want to compromise that in any way by focusing on an individual player. And the reason this is relevant is because we've seen a franchise sacrifice basically the team for a player. And that's the Lakers with Kobe in the last 3 years, where they basically suspended operations of trying to win basketball games now and in the future just to give an epic player a elongated farewell tour, which 2 or 3 years. Russell Westbrook's not going anywhere, but the Thunder has to make sure that it's not sacrificing anything for now and the future just to support a Russell Westbrook monumental season tour.
Any belief that's happening, guys?
I don't think so. To me, is there a guy on the team more committed to winning games? Is there a guy who's more, competitive about winning? Kobe Bryant was too, but I think Russell's a guy who involves guys more. I think he's a very well-liked teammate. I don't think we've seen any signs of that yet. And to Barry's point, I don't think we've seen it. It's a problem if it starts to happen. I do think this is a lot stronger foundation organizationally than the Lakers have had over the last several years. Sure.
My only concern is the whole time and place of when certain things are happening in the Russell Westbrook stats-a-palooza. Errant jumpers at a certain point in time in the game, shot clock situations, maybe not trusting teammates. Not that Russell Westbrook doesn't trust his teammates. I think he does. But taking matters into his own hands more so, or maybe forcing a pass in a situation where he doesn't have to force a pass and he can rather just get a layup. We've seen those kind of short circuits from, the computer Russell Westbrook, as Billy Donovan likes to describe him now. We've seen those short circuits at times from Russell Westbrook where he might take a jumper or a bad three at a situation that's early in the shot clock, or try and slip a pick and roll pass into Steven Adams when it's really congested on the inside. So, for the most part, Russell Westbrook does a really good job of conducting the Thunder offense, but it's in those situations where, it could mean the game, whether it's late or early, where he's forcing passes and the turnovers get to piling up, or the errant shots, which lead into points on the other end because teams get out on the fast break or they score off of Russell Westbrook's missed shots. Those are the things that concern me more than anything.
You talk about trusting teammates. Let me remind people, you're watching Thunder Thursday here, talking about all things Thunder. A couple teammates that I have to think Russell Westbrook feels a lot better about of late, Victor Oladipo and Anthony Morrow. Two guys playing really well. Anthony Morrow playing really well because he's playing, frankly. We haven't hardly seen him yet this year and has come on of late. But we talked early in the year about Victor Oladipo. Struggles, just didn't look comfortable. Can we officially say is he out of his slump at this point?
I'm not going to say that because I have a text string going on with some friends. We joke about how after the first game that Texas won over Notre Dame, everybody was saying Texas is back. Let's not go being all Texas is back yet. Okay, we got 62 games left. We want to see some consistency from Victor Oladipo. He's obviously playing very well right now. Last night he started 6 for 6. His defensive end, he's been really good. He had some key defensive plays in the last 3-game stretch. So let's wait and see. Getting too over the moon about Victor Oladipo, but he's playing the way he needs to play right now to be that second banana guy to Russell Westbrook.
All right.
Here's what I like about him. We're starting to see some much better play when he's on the floor and Westbrook's not. That's a thing that he's still got to get better at, but they need him so much in those situations, especially until Cameron Payne gets back. And I feel like he's starting to find a little bit of a comfort zone. It was a lot to ask of him to say, okay, come over from what you were doing in Orlando and now cede everything to Russell Westbrook. He's the guy who's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to make the plays. But then come back in when he's off the floor and you do all that stuff. You take over. Don't play that way this time of the game. Do play that way that time. I think he's starting to find that balance.
Yeah, and lately his point numbers have been up. 25 last night, as you guys know. Only had 8 in that game against the Knicks. But before that, 18, 26, 18. Kind of seeming to find a rhythm and maybe getting a little more comfortable with that outside shot, which, I don't think he's a great, over-the-moon spot-up shooter, but he definitely looks better in it. Barry, what do you like out of Oladipo right now?
I like a lot of things from what I've seen out of Oladipo so far. His three-point shooting is over 40%, and if he keeps that up, everything else is sort of gravy because that's not what they expected. They thought he might improve over that 34 level that he had established, but if he can shoot like this, that's a game changer for the Thunder.
Career high, 41-4 right now.
Number 2, Oladipo, even when he doesn't score, is contributing. That 8-point game at New York, I thought he was excellent. Played good defense, had a good floor game, didn't take bad shots. He didn't shoot a lot that night. So I think he's really sort of getting comfortable with the Thunder. It was a little bit shaky early. I think it's getting more and more comfortable, and it's becoming the sort of the high side that we talked about, the dynamic backcourt of Oladipo and Westbrook. This is sort of what we were talking about, and when he can play like this, the Thunder's a different team, and he's playing like this more and more and more. So I'm vastly encouraged about it, Oladipo.
By the way, I'm not saying he's going to be a 40% three-point shooter going forward, but if he is, $84 million was a bargain.
Another number to throw around today. Well, what about Anthony Morrow, guys? A guy that was pretty much relegated to the bench early in the year, giving way to Alex Abrines, who, frankly, I think we could say played pretty well for his rookie go here in the league. But Anthony Morrow doing what Anthony Morrow does. He's hitting a lot of shots. Is this a sea change? Is this an experiment? What do we think this is?
Well, if we know anything about what Billy Donovan is about in terms of his rotations and experimenting and tinkering, we have not seen the last of Alex Abrinas. We maybe haven't seen the last of Kyle Singler, who has been MIA for the past however many games. But
I think he's been MIA ever since he let DeMar DeRozan get going that one game against Toronto.
That's a distinct possibility. I think
might be the line of demarcation.
I think DeMar DeRozan might have buried him somewhere in that mid-range, that 15 to 18-foot range that he's so good at. But, you know, it's encouraging to see Anthony Morrow on the floor, not just offensively. We know he can score. We know he can shoot well. We knew he was going to get going from three-point range. He's still at around 34%, and that's going to climb. But the minutes he's gotten in the past 4 or 5 games, 4 out of those games, Thunder wins, have been encouraging from the standpoint that he's not just on the floor for his offense, he's being kept out there defensively too at times. And Billy Donovan is trusting him to go guard some guys. At the end of the game last night when they went small, Billy Donovan stuck with Anthony Morrow against the Wizards in the small ball lineup. And that was interesting to see from the standpoint that, you know, we consider Anthony Morrow like a layup line basically.
Right.
And if you look at his defensive metrics in the past 5 games, they haven't been great. I think he might be like 4th worst in the team on defensive rating. But Billy Donovan is trusting this guy to go out and try and make plays defensively, do the best he can. And when Anthony Morrow is scoring, it can compensate for some of the defensive lapses he might have. And Billy Donovan has talked about that. And the same thing applies to Enes Kanter. If those guys are scoring to offset some of the defensive shortcomings, it's fine. When Anthony Morrow starts missing shots, that's when we're going to start seeing more of Alex Abrinas.
How does he change this team, Brad, in your mind? If he plays like he has been playing, how does that alter things?
Well, it creates some space. If you look at the end of the game, you look at the end of regulation, really, Russell Westbrook wanted to pass him the ball, it looked to me like, and Washington just blanketed him. There were 2 guys, John Wall didn't leave him. They helped. It gave Russell a really clean look from three-point range. He hadn't been making shots, but he made that one, and it was a really good look. Morrow creates a lot of space, and they really need space. They've shot the ball better from three-point range than we thought they would, largely because Oladipo's been a much better shooter than he had been in his career, but Domantas Sabonis can shoot threes. They've been better, but a really reliable guy like that to stretch the defense, space the floor, give Russell Westbrook a little more room to operate. It's a huge thing for them.
Is Abrinas, I mean, they have to get him back in there at some point, don't you think, Barry? He's a young guy.
Oh, yeah. And these guys have talked about it in the last few days that Billy does this. He'll go, we saw it last year, he'll go 2 or 3 weeks playing somebody, but then goes back to somebody that's in the doghouse and comes back because he wants guys ready to play. So we'll see Abrinas. And the Thunder's not going to go through this season without injury. People are going to go down, and people's going to have to step up. And the truth of the matter is, the spotting of Anthony Morrow and finding places where he can help you on offense and not hurt you as much on defense, that's a nightly adventure for Billy Donovan. I mean, literally, that's part of the game plan. And when they sit around, all right, how and where and who against can we use Anthony Morrow tonight? Sometimes the answer is going to be we can't. The last couple of weeks, the answer's been here, here, and here. Last night, the Washingtons go super small. Billy literally has 6 perimeter players. He had to play 5 of them. I'm not counting Kyle Singler. Let's not get ridiculous. So there's 6. He had 6. He had 6. He had 6 perimeter players. He had to go with 5 of them, and he ends up, using Morrow a good chunk. He also went with Samaje Christian down in the last 3 minutes. He's not afraid to try new things and experiment. He's experimenting still, and we saw that last year. We're seeing it now.
Yeah, it's just interesting when you see a guy get as hot as Morrow has been these last few games. You start to think, well, why would you? I mean, you almost forget that Abrinas had his good moments too. You think, well, how's this all going to work out? But Billy Donovan has shown that he's able to get teams ready to go, and so I know it's a 1 year. We're working off of 1 year, but it worked pretty well last year.
And what's interesting about Morrow is he played a season high last night, 31 minutes. He also had perhaps his worst shooting game. I think he was 2 of 7 from three-point range, 2 of 9 from the field.
He had 6 points.
He wasn't making shots, but when he's on the floor, all of a sudden that defense goes, it gets stretched out. more room for Russell Westbrook, more room for Steven Adams, more room for Victor Oladipo.
Yeah, definitely so. Okay, guys, lastly, before we wrap this up, we've seen the Thunder go on a 4-game winning streak here, get on a nice little run. But now, to me, it looks like the schedule's getting ready to start turning. You look at the Pelicans, maybe not turning just yet, but then but then at Atlanta, then Houston and Boston are in town here, then on the road to Portland, Utah, the Suns here, again, a game against the Hawks. Some games in there that really could be telling. Brett, what do you want to see out of this club as you look ahead to these next couple weeks?
Well, probably the same thing that Billy Donovan wants to see, which is just some consistency. That they've been so up and down. They've been they've had stretches where they have these terrible first quarters. They fixed that first quarter problem last night. It wasn't a problem against Washington, and then all of a sudden they blow a lead late when Washington goes small and does some different things. So, I think you just like to see. I think if nothing else, just level out the defensive effort and not just effort. They play hard all the time for the most part. Just that defensive execution, level it out, have some consistency, because you're going to need it. I mean, the Pelicans come in here with Anthony Davis, you got to deal with that, but the rest of the team is not much to deal with. But starting with Atlanta, you're going to run into some really efficient offensive teams. They're going to have Houston again. You just got to have some degree of consistency there at the defensive end.
Any of those games as you guys look ahead, Barry or Eric, that you're really going to be looking towards to see how the Thunder plays against a certain team?
Atlanta game is going to be fascinating to me. It's going to be second night of a back-to-back.
Yep.
Another tough situation for the Thunder on the second night of a back-to-back on the road. That's a road game, right?
Yes.
Just making sure. Okay.
The first one, and then there's another one
Yeah,
here
they play
later
Atlanta twice
in
in the
My
next.
brain's still scrambled from the road trip last week. That's going
You're
to
forgiven.
be an excellent litmus test to see. I mean, if the Thunder can keep this thing going, if they can really lock in on somebody defensively on the road. They got another road win against, a good Knicks team that's good at home. So that was a good road win for the Thunder. And for them to go out and beat a team in Atlanta that's playing efficiently on both ends right now, on the second night of a back-to-back and stay focused, that'll be huge. And to say that the Pelicans are going to be, to say that the Pelicans
they
are
might
just
want to be the Penguins from the way they're playing. I don't know.
to say that the Pelicans are just going to roll over
Right.
is wrong, because
Yeah.
Anthony Davis is playing at an MVP level. The Pelicans have been much better in their past 10 games. I think they're like 5-5 or something like that. So Anthony Davis can come in here and single-handedly beat the Thunder.
Yeah.
He's going to give the business to Steven Adams, DeMontis Sabonis, whoever wants it. So it's going to be a tough 2-game set, that Sunday-Monday set coming up, and it'll be interesting to see if the Thunder can, get out really quick against the Pelicans, get Russell Westbrook some rest in that fourth quarter and be ready for Atlanta on the next night.
Yeah, Buddy Hield returns. He's not having a great rookie year, but maybe being back in Oklahoma soil turns some things. Barry, I'm always interested in a Rockets game, and they're coming back, and Patrick Beverly will be on the floor for that game.
Thunder beat them the other night without Beverly. Robertson did the great match on the great defense on James Harden. What's interesting is that it looks like there's a decent chance that the Thunder and the Rockets and Utah and maybe Memphis, if they can survive Mike Conley's loss, those are the teams going to be jostling for playoff position. To get 2 up on one particular team like the Thunder could against Houston would be big. One thing I think to remember this time of year, the deeper in the season, the records start meaning more. But this early in the season, your record doesn't always indicate what kind of a team you are. Washington last night, came in with 5-11 or 6-12, whatever they were, not very good. But with Beal and Wall both playing, they were 5-6. So they was an okay team when they have those two guys. We looked at the Knicks, beating the Knicks in New York. That's an okay win. But when you think about the Knicks, I think were 7-1 or 6-1 at home going into that game. That was a nice win. New Orleans is coming in. They got a bad record, but they're a different team since Anthony Davis. You can't – all that stuff that happened before Anthony Davis doesn't mean anything. So that's going to be a difficult game. Anthony Davis, of course, has a history. He's kept the Thunder out of the playoffs, for crying out loud. So almost every game can be looked at deeper than just the record. So these next few games are going to be very interesting for the Oklahoma City.
And Drew Holiday back for the Pelicans as well, and that's been really the big difference for them, getting him back after being out with the situation with his wife.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.